So yes, so just like we have functions, just like we studied how a comprehension, a list comprehension, a dictionary comprehension can create an entire list, can perform operations on a list or a dictionary in a single line. Similarly, we have functions called lambda functions where we need not to write these different long functions. We can perform the same function in a single line. So like, let's say how a lambda function is created, what the syntax of a lambda function is. First of all, I'll let you know a lambda function can take multiple parameters but can only execute a single expression. That is, they can perform only single operation. So just like we have over here, we are performing multiple operations. We have two loops over here. So we are performing multiple operations over here. So same thing cannot be performed in a lambda function. Only a single operation can be handled by lambda function. So let's say, how do we define a lambda function? So generally we have a variable. We assign a lambda function to a variable. How it is done? Let's say lambda. So we define a lambda variable to it, which can be anything. Let's say f, and we follow it by a colon. We add a colon to it. And let's say we want to perform an operation. Let's say we need to find out whether the string has walls or not. So how to do that? Let's say oven. If f in a e i o u if so let's say if f in a e i o u print vowel. So let's pass. How do we call a lambda function? So we pass the variable, we pass the value in parentheses to the variable. Let's say I pass oven over here. So vowel is not, it's saying vowel is not present. So that is, there is an error in my function. There is an error while creating a function because we have two vowels over here. So how to do that? So this is something I have created f. Let's take it a simple one. I'll help you out with this one later on. Let's say I have an even number. I have to check whether this number is even or not. I'll check out by dividing f by 2, and if it is equal to 0, I'll say it is even, else I'll say the number is odd. So let me pass a number to it. Let's say I pass 20 to it. So 20 is even. Let's say I pass 31. So it is odd. So let's take few more examples on lambda function. So basically what we are doing over here is how the loop is working. So we are defining f, which is a representative of this number that is being passed over here. So basically f is equal to 20 over here. Whatever number I'm passing over here, that is equal to f. So it checks if this 20 is divisible by 2 and I get 0 as the result, then the number is even, else the number is odd. This is how the entire loop is working on a lambda function. Let's take few more examples. Okay, let's say I have two numbers. I have to multiply those numbers. So how to do that? So let's say write a lambda function to multiply two numbers. So again, let's say I take n is equal to lambda x comma y, and I have to perform x into y as a result. So when I pass two numbers to it, 2 comma 3, it will give me the result as a multiplication. So x and y over here are x is 2, y is 3, and whenever it is passed over here, it will give me a result x into 3, which is x into y, which is 6. 2 into 3, which is 6. Let's say in 10 comma 2, it will give me 20. That's how a lambda function works. Now let's take another example. So these are simple examples. These are all simple examples. Let me find out something else where we can explore lambda function more in a more better way. Let's open these ones. I'm just looking forward for some question where I can help you out on how a lambda function works. So let's say lambda function hello world, that's a basic one. Nothing doing over here. This is also normal thing. No. Okay. These are again simple things here. Let's take this one. Check. Let's see practical use. Format numerical cells the lambda function, and number is passed as a parameter to perform operations. So what it is doing over here, it is they are taking a variable and passing a number to it and checking using an f string. So if number colon e, this is what they want the result to be in a form of a dictionary. So what they are doing is if instance number comma int, else f number dot 2f. Okay, so it is checking the format of a number. So like they are passing a number into int, and they are passing the number into a float. Dot 2f is a float value. So what it is doing when I'm printing int format, so format numeric, it is passing a number to it. So integer formatting के अंदर it is just keeping the number as an integer, but in float formatting it is converting the number into a float format up to 2 decimal places. So let's see what it is doing over here. So where's my Python? Yeah. So when I'm doing this thing, let's say it is n only. Fine. I'm taking a variable x, and I'm checking if my x, I'm passing x as an exponential form. This is f string. This is nothing else. This is an f string. How we print something. This is just an f string. So if isInstance is a function that checks number is an integer, else it will convert the number into a float value. So let's say I pass number as 5. This should be x. This should be x. So when I'm passing the number as x, so it is a integer number. So it is giving me integer value. Let's say I pass it as, so it is giving me a float value. It is checking whether it is an integer. It will give me an integer result like this. If it is otherwise, it will give me result as a float value. So that is how a lambda function works. If you want some more examples, I can help you out with some more examples as well. Okay, what's the difference between lambda function and without lambda? So supports single line operations. Yes, but that's what I told. I can perform the entire function in a single line. Supports any number of lines inside the function block. It is good for performing short operations. Only a single operation can be performed using a lambda function. This is good for any cases that require multiple lines of code. When there are multiple operations that need to be performed, you need to define a function like we did yesterday. So using the lambda function can sometimes reduce the readability of the code. Yes, because it's a single line function and you might not understand it. We can use comments and function to describe ease for readability. In a lambda function, it becomes difficult to explain it, whereas we can use comments, we can use hashtag comments, to explain what is happening in a function when we define a function without lambda. So that's how it can also be used into list comprehension as well. So let's take this is even list. It is checking whether the list is even or not. So I'm passing a list over here with an argument equal to x. So it checks if x multiplied by 10 for x in range 1 to 5. So it will print the entire list and multiply it by 10. That's what it will do. Let's check it out, what it is doing. I'm taking this thing. So what it is doing is, it is checking is the list even or not. So that is just a variable name it has taken. This function is not checking whether it is even or not. We'll check it later on. So it is creating a list. It's basically a list comprehension that is happening over here, because I have put this entire thing into square brackets. See, this entire thing is in square brackets. So I'm taking a function, I'm passing and taking an argument and equating it to x. This is the result that I want. Fine, this is the final result that I want, and I'm multiplying the argument with 10 for x in range 1 to 5. For whatever x would be in range 1 to 5, so I will get 1 2 3 4, and the result of this thing would be, let's say it is 1 2 3 4 and everything is multiplied by 10. So I'll get 1 into 10 10, 20, 30 and 40. This would be the result of this function. Let's say is, so when I'm typing this, let's call this function is even list. No, I have to call this function. Any ideas how can I call this functions? You guys might have been practicing this. Okay, so this is what it is doing. I have already let's check out what is the type of, let's say type of is even list. So it shows me that it is a list. Let's say I need to traverse through this list. So for I in is even underscore list, print I. Let's say whatever values we get over here for I in range. So I'm getting 0 1 2 3, but it should have been multiplied by 10. Let's see why it is not giving me 10. See, what it has done is for item in I, print item. That's what I have been doing. Let's see. For I in, let's say take this thing only. Oh, fine. Someone has joined the lobby. Can you please admit that guy? Okay. So what is happening over here? See, I created a list. It's a list comprehension. I'm doing a list comprehension using Lambda function. How do we do a list comprehension? Let's say I need to create a list of even numbers. So I would do like this: x for x in range 1 comma 5. So let's say I want everything to be multiplied by 10. So this is the list that I have created normally through list comprehension. When I'm typing this, I get this list as a whole. Let's say I need to use, let's just complex it up, and I need a function to create this list every time when I pass a range 1 to 5. So what I'm doing is how that function will work. Let's first define a function over here. Let's say lambda. So I need x value. So what I need to do is x multiplied by 10 for x in range 1 comma 5. This is actually what my list should look like. Right. This is what I have done over here. I have just put it in a lambda function. So let's say this is equal to st1.
Okay, I found this on the web for this is
Sorry, Siri got mad at times. So list 1. See, it is not printing like this because I have put it in a function. I have to traverse through a list. So let's say I traverse through the list for I in lst1 print I. My function name is wrong. Sorry. I have to pass it as an argument. What's the error? Missing one required positional argument for x. Okay. Okay, yeah. So the error over here is I need to assign something to it. Let's say y is equal to x, and I'm doing x multiplied by 10 and I'm assigning it to y. This is what my list should look like. Understand? So I have created a function saying y is equal to x, and I'm assigning the value x multiplied by 10, where x is in range 1 to 5. When I run this list, a list is created for me, and when I run through it, I'll get the arguments over here. Right? So this is something what we did over here, the same thing. We are running this thing, we are multiplying. Over here what I was doing was I was taking x in a range something and I'm multiplying whatever value of x is. See, x is in range 1 to 5, but x is equal to argument. So I'm multiplying argument by 10. So in a way, x is getting multiplied by 10 and the value is being stored in is even list. So when I'm traversing through the list, I'm getting this value. I have to run this again. So this is how you can play around with list comprehension, dictionary comprehension using a lambda function. Lambda function is nothing, it is a single line function, nothing else. Let's say I need to find which is maximum of the two numbers. So let's say I define a variable as let's say z is equal to lambda x comma y. So print x is greater than y if x greater than y, else y is greater than x. So when I'm doing this, let me pass two variables to it. Let's say 10 comma 20. So it would say y is greater than x. So that's how we play around results. Let's say I need to put it as a f string. So what I can do is I can pick up these values directly and it will tell me which is greater than which one. It will give me numbers rather than giving x and y. So I'll put an f string over here as well. I'll put y. I'll put x. So see, 20 is greater than 10. Or let's take it other way around. So it will give me 30 is greater than 20. So that's how a lambda function works. That's how you can play around with lambda function. So I'll give you questions on lambda function after the class. So any doubts on lambda function so far? Guys, when I ask something, please reply back yes, no, please explain me again.
Sorry, could you please repeat the first statement as I missed? I was not on time.
Abhishek, you can check out the recording. I have to cover other things as well. I'll give you a gist.
Sure.
No, well, don't worry. I'll give you a gist. What we have covered, I'll repeat again in next 5
Sure.
minutes. So what we were studying today was what is a lambda function. A lambda function is nothing where all the operations, see, whatever functions that we created yesterday, whatever functions that we were working on yesterday, they had multiple operations that used to be performed in them. So I have two loops running, two iterations running in a single go. Let's take some another example. Fine. Okay, let's say I need to print a table. Let's say I need to print a table of 5, a multiplication table of 5. So this is my code. let's say I need to write the same thing using a lambda function. How I can do? So let's say I have lambda x. Fine. So what operation do I need to perform is so I'm multiplying x by y for y in range 1 comma let's say 11. So no, this won't work. So this is something sorry. So x comma y, this is the result that I want. So x comma y, perform x into y for y in range 1 comma 11. Let's say I define this as n. So see, what's the logic behind forming a function? See, at the end I will be passing two variables to x and y. So x and y, but what I require is only a single variable. I need to run a table of 5. So for that thing, let me pass a single variable, let's say 5. What I'm doing is I'm performing x into y for y in range 1 to 11. Perform, and the result should be x into y for y in range 1 to 11. Anything 1 to 11 or 0 to 10, 0 to 11, that doesn't matter. So this should work, right? This should work, right? Let's say get a table of 5 using lambda function. Okay, again my bad. I have only mentioned that thing that this cannot be, these are multiple operations, they cannot be run in a lambda function. So for that I need to create a list for it and put it in a lambda function. So this is how we did earlier. So this is the classic example what we did over here in the list, in list comprehension. So yeah, this over here, what we were doing was we were creating a list. Let's say it is a table. So we are creating a list. I'm passing an argument. I'm multiplying the argument with, let's say, x. So for x in range 1 to 5, let's check this thing out, what this thing does. For I in table print table. List object is not callable. Okay, list is not callable, fine. For I in table, print I. Let's not pass 5 to it. So 1, 4, 8, 12, 16. See, I'm sorry guys. So let me explain you what lambda function is. Lambda function can take multiple parameters but can only execute a single expression. So let's say how a lambda function is defined. Lambda is defined with a keyword lambda and a variable on which the operation has to be performed. Let's say I need to create a lambda function to check whether a number is even or odd. So what I'll do is I'll put a condition: if the number is divisible by 2 completely, then the number is odd. So how to read this thing? The number is even if the number is divisible by 2 completely, else the number is odd. So how to call a lambda function? You have to pass the value to the variable that you have created. So over here 20 is basically the f which is being checked over here. So 20 over here, f is equal to 20. So when you divide 20 by 2, it will check out whether it is 0 or not. If it is 0, it will give me to even. If it is odd, if it is not divisible by 2, it will give me odd as the result. Similarly, I can perform multiplication on two numbers. So let's say I have two numbers x and y. This is the operation that I'm performing on the two numbers. I pass two numbers to the variable and I get the result as a multiplication of two numbers. So lambda function, let's say I'm checking whether the number is an integer or a float value. So I need the result in that way. So this is the string that I want to print. So let's say x, whether it's exponential form, I want to get if it's an integer, I would get the result in an exponential form. It is saying if is instance is a function that checks whether x is integer or not. If this is an integer, if the number is integer, which is not in a decimal form, I will get the result like this, which is in exponential form. But if it is not an integer, if this condition doesn't satisfy, it will give me result as a float. Let's say I pass the variable, let's say 10,000. So it will give me 10 to the power 4. 1 into 10 to the power 4. That's the result. In the exponential form, it will give me like this. But let's say I have 2.5. So it will give me the result as a floating variable, which is like this. So that's how we define a lambda function. We can also look forward to how we can do a list comprehension in it. Let's say list comprehension, I have to define everything in square brackets to create a list directly in a single line. That's what a list comprehension is. So I create a function, a lambda function, where I have equated an argument. I have taken an argument or a variable arg and have equated that variable to x. So for every value of x between 1 to 5, I am multiplying my argument with 10. So this is a loop. Whenever for every iteration from for the first 5 iterations, so that is 1 2 3 4, this will cover 1 2 3 4, not 5, because we take n minus 1. So for every 1 2 3 4 values of x, argument will be multiplied by 10 and it will be stored in a list. See, this is the list. If I run this tells me that the type of this function, this variable, is list. I have created a list over here because the type is list. So when I'm running a list, I need to check what is the value of every element in my list. So I'm just iterating through my list. Is even list. No need to give brackets. You can give also brackets. So it will give me this result, which is multiplying every value for every iteration from 1 to 4. It will multiply x argument by 10. Argument is equal to x only over here. So when x is 1, argument is 1, it will multiply 1 by 10 and give me 10. Then x is 2, it will take 2, multiply it by 10 and give me 20. When x is 3, argument becomes 3, 3 multiplied by 10, it gives me 30. Similarly, it will give me 40. That's what a lambda function is altogether.